Hi everyone, and welcome to another rate and rank video that I'm going to do for the solo Beatle albums. And I'm going to be covering Paul McCartney this time, the first one I'm going to do in this particular new series that I'm offering here. And it's the 2007 release of Memory Almost Full, which originally I just had on a CD. And there were, a couple of versions of this available before I got the vinyl. Here's another one. This is a kind of deluxe edition. Get more into this later and explain what's on here. This album was released in the UK on June the 4th, 2007, followed on June 5th, 2007 in the US. And I think it's a really enjoyable album by Paul overall. And a lot of people who aren't really fanatical Paul fans tend to feel that after Band on the Run, Paul was done. Well, he's had a lot to offer in the last 20 plus years, I think. And this is a pretty decent effort. Now, this debuted on the charts, number 5 on the UK charts, and number 3 on the US. So it was a pretty successful album. But what's interesting is that this was released in the US by the Starbucks record label, Hear Music. And I heard that 47% of the sales of this were due to the Starbucks connection. You know, I don't know how true that is, but supposedly that was the case, at least in the U.S. We have the band members on here that we all have come to know and love. Band members that have been playing with Paul since, I think, around 2001 or so. We got, let's see, Paul Wickens on keyboards, Rusty Anderson, lead guitar. Then we got Brian Ray, rhythm guitar and some bass. Of course, Paul plays bass. And one of my favorites, the drummer, Abe Laboriel Jr., who does a great job on the drums. And I love watching him play live with Paul. The history of this album, how it began and everything. I'm doing a little research here, and I want to give a thanks right off the bat to a website that I'm going to be using a lot here called The Beatles Bible. And a lot of you people have probably been familiar with that. And it doesn't matter where you get your information from, Wikipedia, other websites. The whole thing is that, you got to find the details and use them, or books here that I have in my collection, whatever it is. It's kind of like we do the work so you people watching out there don't have to. Well, anyway, I learned some stuff here with the research. I didn't realize that Paul began work on this album in 2003. And he had the producer David Kahn, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I apologize for that. And they did 8 songs at Abbey Road Studios for this album in 2003. Some of you will probably have a familiarity with Abbey Road, a certain group that used to record there. But then in 2005, Paul suddenly decided he wanted to change and work with producer Nigel Godrich. And that produced the Chaos and Creation in the Backyard album that was released in 2005. So I didn't even realize that Paul had stopped work on this album, went over to do Chaos and Creation, released it in 2005, then came back here in 2006 or so to do the finishing touches for this album. So I didn't know it worked like that. It's very interesting. Let's see now. I'm going to show you the inside. This particular copy is a US copy. I have this still sealed. I'll probably open it one of these days, but for now it stays sealed. And I'm going to use the French copy here that I have to show a few items that are inside. First, we have the inner sleeve. Nice picture here of Paul. Lyrics. The label copies the cover. We got an easy chair, for lack of a better word, an old-fashioned kind of chair. And I guess it's time to be reminded of the fact that I'm not wild about this cover. I try to talk about covers. I mean, this is not exactly my idea of a thrilling cover. Paul's covers got very, very poor, I think, and uninteresting after a while. But fortunately, in the inside, when you pull it out, it's very interesting what you have in the interior. This should have been the album cover. That's nice. So it kind of makes up for it with the inside of the package. Nice pictures of Paul. This even opens up to a poster. How do we like that, huh? Very nice design. Very nice. And this particular CD came with a DVD. It opens up like this, as you can see. Same kind of deal. Came with a DVD that Live at the Electric Ballroom from June 7th, 2007, and a couple of videos it has here. The video for the song Dance Tonight, the video for the song Ever Present Past. And it's really good to see a performance on the concert here of a song called House of Wax, which I will talk about later when I go into the album. Also 3 bonus tracks here that are not on the proper album. In Private, another track called Why So Blue, and finally 222. Is that like Room 222? For those of you old enough to remember that show? Anyway, let's get to the album here, huh? We're going to talk about the songs now. This was Paul's kind of biggest chart-topping hit, at least in the States, in a long time. So it was successful. Okay, first we start off with the track Dance Tonight. Dance Tonight has Paul on mandolin. He plays the mandolin, and it's kind of like a little partying kind of hootenanny, sing-along kind of thing. Just a little jolly tune, and you know, it's typical of Paul, though, in a way. When you first hear it, you might think to yourself, you know, here goes Paul again. You know, he's going to be all cutesy, and he's going to be singing, you know, everybody gonna dance tonight, everybody gonna feel all right, everybody gonna dance around tonight. People stomping their feet. In fact, the beginning of the track sounds like it's a foot stomper at the beginning that you hear. You can't help, though. You know, that's the thing about Paul. It stays in your head. Once you hear this tune, you can't get it out. As I don't know, as twee as you might say it is, it's a catchy sucker. And because of that, I've rated it 8 out of 10. It's hard not to like this song. It's one of those songs you like in spite of yourself. Can't help it. Second track was the first single, and that song is called Ever Present Past. Ever Present Past, again, you know, it's kind of a upbeat kind of song. I think it's perfectly suited for a single. But it's almost like as if Paul's doing it because he feels like he has to come down with something like that, typical single, almost like written to order, if you know what I mean. You know, Paul can do these things by now after all these decades in his sleep, and it's definitely made for the commercial market, but he does say some stuff in it, like he's talking about problems, maybe a little revelations of things he feels he's experiencing. He says, there's far too much on my plate, don't have time to be a decent lover, you know, and I like the middle part of here. You know, I don't know what you say, the chorus or the middle bit that goes on here, which I will not attempt to sing. I also give this an 8 out of 10. It's a fun track. Then we come to number 3, third track on the album, which kind of slows things down a little bit, but that's not a bad thing. It has a totally different feel to it. It's called See Your Sunshine. And you can tell in this one especially that Paul's voice is older. You know, he showed evidence in the 2000s of his voice getting an older man's sound to it. And I think it works in the song's favor. I like the directions this song goes in, the way he sings it. He tries to reach a little bit of a high type of sound and then kind of like a little lower. I like the way his voice deviates in this song. And I found out that this song is supposedly about Heather. Paul said it was a love song to Heather Mills, who he, you know, eventually split up with and divorced. Interesting factor of this is, Paul, I believe, went on record as saying, you know, because some of these songs were written before, during, and after Heather. So then he went on to say that he didn't bother, like, taking any of the songs off, much to his credit, you know, because even though he was no longer with Heather and all that and all the problems they had, he left it on anyway, because a lot of times Paul's songs can fit for anybody. If you didn't know See Your Sunshine was specifically about Heather Mills, it could go for just a general love song about any woman. So it's a nice song. I give it a 7 out of 10. Now we have the fourth track, which is what I call the rocker. This is Paul's rockin' track for this particular title. It's called Only Mama Knows. It is a track that I just love. I like how it starts very deceptively with violins or cellos. I'm not an instrumentalist, so I don't know, but you think you're going to get a classical number here. You say, what is this going to be? Some kind of classical tune here? And then, boom, it goes into a heavy rocker. And it's in the vein of Junior's Farm and Get Back, kind of like another version of that kind of approach. I really enjoy it so much that I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. Now, the lyrics in there, Paul's kind of going as like a general storyteller again. You know, he's singing a fictional story about, I guess, a mother who kind of laid the baby down and abandoned the baby in an airport. At least that's the way that's what I get out of it. And wanting to know if the baby, as he grows up, will ever see his father's face. Doesn't know why the mother left him to just exist like this in this place. I really like the whole feel of it. It's an enjoyable rocker from Paul. It just may be my favorite song on this album, but it's hard to tell. I'll rank them all at the end. I've got a few here that are contenders as my favorite songs. Okay, then we go a little slower again. We slow things down again to number 5. The track is called You Tell Me. You Tell Me now, from what I understand, is written about Linda. And that was written for Linda McCartney. Maybe, I don't know if it was about her passing or, you know, it must have been, obviously, but it has a somber kind of feel. And again, you know, Paul's voice in this song has an aged, worse for wear kind of feeling. But yet, the fact that his voice is kind of like older and wizened kind of accentuates the song for me, and I like it. You Tell Me is a nice little tune there, nice little effort. I give it a 7 out of 10. Now, I keep forgetting, because on the CDs here, you didn't have to flip CDs over, so I keep forgetting that this has a side 1 and side 2. Everything I've talked about so far is side 1. And we have one more track on side 1. It closes out the side. It's a song called Mr. Bellamy, which I have found out is a favorite of a lot of fans, but I'm not that crazy about it. To me, Mr. Bellamy is the weakest track on side 1. Don't really know what it's about, but I've heard some speculation. I heard that it was about, some people think it's about trying to talk a man down from the ledge of a building. Be careful, you know, not to jump, not to commit suicide. I've heard some people saying that it was another song about Heather, possibly about the breakup or something about that. I don't know. Paul's voice tries, again, different avenues. Reminds me of Uncle Albert, you know, when Paul starts getting into different segments, different portions of songs, sings different levels, up, down, changes tune, changes his approach to the whole thing, funny voices and things. Sometimes it works, as it does in Uncle Albert, which I love. Sometimes it's just average, and I decided to give Mr. Bellamy an average rating of 5 out of 10. It's not one of my favorite tracks on the album at all. Now we're going to flip the album over to side 2. Okay? Side 2 starts off with what I consider is the worst song on the album, the least song if you prefer, to be kind. It's a song called Gratitude, and it's a slow number where Paul is really annoying the way he sings gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. I think it's annoying when I do it. Listen to the song. It's easily the weakest track on this album for me personally. I know some people like it. I've talked to people. It's not my cup of tea. I dislike it so much, I'll give it only a 1, which seriously drags this album down, unfortunately. 1 out of 10. Then we go to track 8. And I think as we get to the next bunch of tracks, we're kind of getting into a medley of sorts. Kind of like a bunch of songs that kind of segue into each other. Kind of Paul trying a little Abbey Road thing there. Side 2 going on here. First track is called Vintage Clothes. Vintage Clothes is really a favorite of a lot of people also. I hear a lot of good things said about that very often. I enjoy it. I think it says some good stuff in it. It's got some good lyrics in it. I can't say a lot about it, really. I mean, I know this song. I hear it in my head. But, you know, when you're trying to describe song after song after song, there's not always something specific you can say about it. I like the sound of it. I like some of the words of it. I'm not thinking it's great, though, or anything, so I'm only giving it a 7 out of 10, but I enjoy it 7 points worth out of 10. Then it kind of like goes abruptly into a song called That Was Me. And again, the voice that Paul uses, and the confidence and the kind of attitude he has, the way he sings this, I really enjoy. I think it's really a good effort here. That Was Me is a good song. I like the way it just starts cold, almost like right. 1 minute we're singing about vintage clothes, the next minute we start with That Was Me. It's the jolt of the change in tempo and style of song that really helps you enjoy it at the same time. So I give it a 7 out of 10, That Was Me. Then we go, as we continue this medley of sorts, we go into a song called Feet in the Clouds, kind of a little more mellow, kind of laid back, and I'm not really wild about Feet in the Clouds. It starts out okay, but then as we continue, we start getting into a kind of dialogue that basically sounds lazy. I don't know if it was intentionally supposed to be like this. Probably was. I don't think Paul ran out of lyrics. It's hard to believe that somebody as great a songwriter as Paul would actually just not be able to think of any lyrics. But there's a part in there that's really annoying to me and really irritating, where he says, I find it very, 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 very hard. I don't know if I got all of it. Maybe there's more veries. Maybe there's a few less veries. Too many veries. Anyway, and he repeats that a couple of times. I find it very, 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 very... It doesn't work for me, and that really dampens the song. So it was started out pretty good, but I give it a 5 out of 10. It's just in the middle there. 5 out of 10 because of that. Now we go to a really wonderful song. It is such a good song, such an enjoyable tune. I mentioned it when I was talking about this. There's actually a live performance of this on here. It's worth getting this just for the live performance of this song, and it's called House of Wax. How appropriately titled in a way. House of Wax is the title of an old horror movie, but Paul, I'm going to try my best to give this the justice it deserves. It's a track that's 10 out of 10, needless to say, the way I'm going on about it here. Paul's voice has never sounded in many years so powerful, and he's reaching heights and levels of pitch and command that I have never heard. He goes all over the place. I love the way it dips down at times, and then it goes up to high peaks. All the while, you've got great piano stuff going on, your instrumentation. You've got really, really wonderful background sounds and music. It sounds almost like a horror movie. A horror movie kind of like in a kind of daunting way, but at the same time, majestic and beautiful and wonderful and glorious at the same time. I don't know how else to explain it. It is a powerful track. One of the best things McCartney's done in years. I give it a 10 out of 10, as I said. And then it gets even better still. After that, we go to a track, which is the 12th track on the album. It's a somber track, a very serious track, called The End of the End. And what The End of the End is about is Paul talking about his ultimate death. And you got to hand it to Paul, I mean, for doing this. You got to give him credit for this. Because, you know, I often myself, too, I kind of like, you know, could put Paul's music down at times because I feel he doesn't really get personal enough, doesn't really open himself up enough. Here is a man that's now about 65 years old or so, and he's talking about realizing that I guess that his death is inevitable. It's coming closer as he gets older. And he talks in this song about how he'd like to be remembered, how he'd like people to be on the day that he dies, how he'd like them to remember him, and what he'd like to be done in the event of his death. It's a very emotional song. I think it's such a special tune. It kind of makes me misty-eyed. Every time I hear it, I get very emotional about it. And a lot of the reason for that is because now we all have our own personal beliefs about what we feel happens in death. I personally believe in a life after death, and I personally believe in paradise. The way I look at it is, in my own opinion, even if it doesn't exist, it makes it easier to deal with death. If there's nothing after that, we won't know anyway. But some of the lyrics are, and I'll do my best to get this right, but at the end of the end, it's the start of a journey to a much better place. And this wasn't bad, so a much better place would have to be special. No need to feel sad. No need to cry. It's stuff like along those lines. I'm paraphrasing it. gives me goosebumps just thinking about it, you know. And he talks about, as I say, what he'd like to be remembered for, how people to react at his death. It's emotional just talking about it. I think it's a wonderful track. Now, you could have ended the album there. But again, Paul is not going to let that happen on a somber note like that. So he puts the last track on here. I give the end of the end a 10 out of 10 if I didn't say it. 10 out of 10 for the end of the end. So what he does is he tries to end, as he often does, puts a jokey kind of number at the end that a lot of people take too seriously. It's supposed to be silly. It's supposed to be fun and crazy. It's a song called Nod Your Head. If you really love me, baby, better than staying in bed. If you really love me, baby, nod your head. I mean, it's a crazy, funny song, an upbeat way, jokey way. After what we've been through with the end of the end, we might as well have some fun. And that's how it ends, on a kind of, you know, laid-back, jokey, crazy feeling. And I give that song, Nod Your Head, a slight song, not really anything great, but enjoyable enough to earn, for me, a 7 out of 10. So that's it now. I am now going to tally it all up, which I've done, and what I do is I divide it by 13 songs total, and I get a total of 7.0. This album gets a 7 out of 10 for me, and I think that's right about where it should be. I'm going to also now, as you know, turn around and I'm going to list the songs the best I can, rank them, that is, from what I feel is my most favorite song on here to my least favorite song. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I really appreciate your comments and feedback. Have a great day or night.